Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more rifle testing. And today I brought out a rifle setup that we haven't seen on the channel in a good little while now, but a lot of you guys really seem to like it, and I definitely enjoy shooting it as well, even though it's not the cheapest rifle to shoot, that's for sure. But we've done a test or two with it now, and we've hunted with it on the channel as well, so it's definitely a fun little setup to bring out. But as for that rifle, I brought out the Marlin 336. This one is chambered in 35 Remington, so a little bit more of an obscure cartridge, but it's one that I definitely enjoy. This Marlin has a 20-inch barrel on it, and for the scope, it's an old Tasco 3-9x40. Definitely nothing, you know, brand new, fancy, high-end precision tech there, but this is a 100-yard deer rifle, and for your typical woods hunting, it is plenty good enough. So definitely a pretty nice little setup here, that's for sure. And as for the ammo we're going to test through it today, I brought out some of the good old Remington Core-Lokt loads. These ones are your typical 35 Remington, 200 grain, Core-Lokt soft point rounds. Definitely nothing too fancy about them, but these are probably some of the most popular and reliable deer hunting loads out there. And the back of the box here does claim that they're moving at 2,080 feet per second from the muzzle. Since we have a 20-inch barrel, we may or may not see quite that. Typically they test them through a 22 or 24, like in a Henry or something, but we'll see. Either way, very common round here that in my previous testing off camera a good number of years ago, I don't necessarily think this rifle preferred the Core-Lokts, but I definitely didn't test them in any kind of actual side-by-side comparison or anything, so we'll see what these can actually give us today with good measurements. But as for today's test, we're going to run this the same as we usually do with rifle stuff. I'm going to have a target set up at 100 yards. We're going to shoot 3 groups, 3 shots each, and that'll give us a decent idea of how well this combination actually works together. Of course, all of those shots will be through the chronograph as well, so we can get our average velocities and be able to calculate our energy numbers. And between each of the groups, I will let the gun cool off for a few minutes, so that way we don't get too much heat in the barrel or anything like that. And as for that barrel, it's not a clean bore. It's probably got 10 to 15 shots through it right now, so it's definitely not clean, but it's not completely fouled out neither. So it should be a pretty good test here today, as long as I can do my part on the trigger. So let's set our target up at 100 yards, get you guys a view of everything, shoot our groups, and then we'll bring it all back here to the bench and take a closer look and see what we're able to get. Alright, so let's take a quick peek here at our chronograph numbers before we look at our target. The boss claim was 2080, and we were bouncing right around that 2100 feet per second mark, so I think we're probably going to be pretty close as for our average here. But for a high, we had 2105. For a low, we had 2060. That gave us an average of 2076, so 4 feet per second off what the boss is claiming. So I would say we're right on the money there. And of course, here is your energy number for a 200 grain 35 Remington at 2076 feet per second, so that way you guys can see what kind of energy numbers we're actually pushing. But that gave us an extreme spread of 45 and a standard deviation of 15, so they definitely seem to be some pretty consistent rounds through this rifle, that's for sure. So looking perfectly fine for a velocity here as per what the box is claiming. But let's take a peek at our target and see what kind of accuracy we got. Alright, so here is our 100-yard target, and things definitely got pretty interesting here. Now, it might look a little bit jumbled up, but these 3 shots were our first group. Then we had these 2, as well as this bullet hole with our second. And then we had these 3 right here with our third group. And like I did mention earlier, I did give the rifle about 5 minutes in between each group to cool off, but I did not clean the bore or anything like that between groups. And it is getting up close to 90 degrees already at about 11 a.m. here. So it is pretty hot outside, so that may also play a factor here, because we definitely got worse and worse as we went on with our groups. But I'll still measure things for you, because I think that first group up here in the top left is probably pretty realistic based on what I've seen in my own personal time previously testing these particular rounds through this rifle. So we'll measure that first top left group and see what it gave us. And that first 100-yard group is a 1.75-inch group, so 1 3/4 inches up here in the top left. From previous testing, that's about what I've seen from these rounds, through my rifle anyway. I felt good about all 3 of those trigger pulls, so I think that's about as realistic as we got here. But we'll move over to the right, which was our second group, and these 3 shots right here. I felt good about these 2 trigger pulls, and this one might have been a little bit questionable, so that little bit of a flyer may have just been me, but it may have also just opened up slightly in our group size as well. But that second group gave us a 2.16-inch spread there. So we're definitely starting to open it up. And of course, we'll move to those center 3 shots, which was our third group, and definitely opened it up farther there, all the way out to a 3.82-inch spread. And once again, I felt good about all 3 of those trigger pulls as well. So does this particular rifle just prefer a cold bore, even though I did give it time between each group? Or does it just prefer a little bit of a cleaner bore? Or did the heat of the day just start getting to it a little bit? I don't know. But again, I'm saying between 1.5 and 2 inches is probably pretty realistic, like that top left group for these rounds through this rifle. It definitely tends to do way better with something like the Hornady Lever Evolutions, but would every single one of these shots have taken a deer at 100 yards? Yes, absolutely. Whether it's a 1 3/4-inch spread, a 2-inch spread, or even close to a 3-inch, it's still going to be good enough for a 100-yard woods deer hunt type of scenario. But my particular rifle definitely prefers something like the Hornady stuff. And I did forget to mention, but I did check the scope and we're perfectly fine there as well. Nothing that makes me believe that that's a problem, so that's not an issue either. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about those results right there? I think it's pretty much exactly what I thought we would see, is roughly 2-inch groups or so. From my previous testing, I think the best that I have ever seen with these particular Remington Core-Lokt 200 grainers through this rifle is about 1.5 inches. So maybe on a good day, you might be able to squeak it down towards that 1-inch mark, but I'm saying for a general average, call it about 2 inches for the most part, and that's probably pretty average for this combination. Now, did it do anything super impressive? No, but is a 2-inch group good enough for a 100-yard woods deer hunting setup? Yeah, absolutely. And I know this rifle is capable of much better accuracy than this. I've seen sub MOA with the Hornady Lever Evolutions. It just seems to prefer those more, but who knows? I do have a couple other rounds. I think I've got some Winchesters and potentially even some Federals on the way as well that I definitely want to try and see what happens, because it could just be these Remingtons aren't the best performers through this rifle. Either way, I'd say it's pretty mediocre today. Definitely not anything, super precision accurate necessarily, but it's a decent little deer hunting combo, which is all I would ever use this rifle for anyway. So leave all your thoughts down below. Is that about what you expected to see? Were you a little surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any of these Core-Lokt 200 grain 35 rims? And if so, what kind of results have you seen from them? Would you hunt with this combination, with that kind of accuracy? Or would you want to see it a little bit better than that? And what other rounds do you want to see me test through this 35? Or what other rifle rounds in general do you want to see me try? Let me know all that down below. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.